We were hoping, a lot of companies reporting saying, hey, we're seeing that we'll get inflation under control, because we heard these companies say that 9 months ago and 6 months ago, that, hey, inflation's coming down, supply chain's concerned are easing. Now the companies reporting are saying that we're expecting a high inflationary environment still going forward over the next 12 months. And also we're still seeing supply chain concerns, which is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about, for our listeners, we try to have fun because in our business, and Frank and I talk about this a lot off camera and just when we're kicking around ideas and things, we live in a world where you want instant results. And I'll be the first to admit that. That's why cryptos are so much fun, because you can make life-changing rewards in a year or less. Some of these tokens just do different crazy things in cryptos. Having said that, when we're dealing with a huge macro topic like inflation, it's going to take time to play out. And for us doing weekly podcasts and things like that, you doing every day, it's much harder. But you have to continue to tell people what's going on. But this is going to, it's a bummer to keep pounding the table on inflation, and we can only take so many victory laps. But just yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, just to bring everybody in, today in the Wall Street Journal, Janet Yellen is doing her political kindness of throwing other people under the bus. So what did she do before she was Treasury Secretary? She was the head of the Fed. Now Jerome Powell is there. And she says, quote, given the global nature of these markets, that's the wrong quote. She says, so as Chair Powell indicated himself, both of us probably could have used a better term than transitory. She's referring to inflation. There's no question that we will have huge inflationary pressures. She now expects this to continue for a prolonged period of time. And she says it's unacceptable. And the last thing, here's where good highlighters come into play. She hopes that inflation comes down, Frank.
Hopes. I love that. I love when the Fed uses that word, hope. It's such a piece of shit word that pisses me off. Hope. Like, this is the Fed. This is the smartest people in the room. Yeah, we supposedly hope. That is a terrible, terrible term. It's almost like going at war list to a general saying, hey, you know what? I hope they don't invade us. It's like, really? You hope? I mean, hope is not a strategy. That's not what we expect. That's not why the Fed officials make the money they make and then make millions of dollars speeches after they leave there and go to the Goldman Sachs of the world and every place else and make, tens of millions of dollars and stuff like that. But what frustrates me is, let's deal with the problem and stop the bullshit. Okay, Biden ran, and listen, Biden did his job. He got elected based on the policies that he said. And those policies were no more fossil fuels. We're getting rid of the Keystone Pipeline. We're cutting back on oil companies. They're going to cut back tremendously. Okay, that's what his constituents want, and that's what he did. And that's fine, right? That's what they wanted. Just like when I say DeSantis that we don't want in Florida, the parents in Florida that live in Florida, we don't want our kids, our kindergartens, to learn about freaking sex and gender identification in kindergarten, first, second grade. And if they do, that's our job to teach them, not the teachers, right? That's your job as a politician, right? You're getting hired. Don't bullshit us now, right? Don't go on TV and say, well, it's Russia's fault, and we expect a war in Russia, and it's oil companies' fault. They should be drilling, and, we're releasing federal permits. It's all bullshit. This is exactly what you wanted, and deal with it, because this is the inflation that comes with it. This is what happens when you deal with these problems. But just the deflecting, and I don't know why that's the playbook. It used to be the playbook, and I get it. It used to be the playbook before social media, where you could see everything everyone says their entire life in every single speech on YouTube or any other platform that you want, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, right? Just go out there and say, hey, you know what? I messed up. Don't say, we probably shouldn't have used transitory. Or Biden saying, hey, you know what? It's not our fault. It's not my fault. There's inflation. Just take blame. It's okay. We make mistakes and learn from it. That's what people love. When you say, hey, you know what? I fucked up, but this is what I'm going to do to fix it. We love that. We love those stories, and Americans love that stories. But that's what hurt Trump too. Saying, oh, well, he never did anything wrong. He never did anything wrong. He did a ton of stuff right for the economy. But he was like, everybody loves me, the black community. No one's done more for the black community. There's done more for, the Puerto Rican community. It was this constant like, oh, I'm great, and nothing's my fault. And that's really what pisses off Americans, because we know you're full of shit. And now we're dealing with inflation across every level. And you were even getting fired up and cursing. I say, you should say that on a podcast and say, because it's true feelings. What I mean, it's true feelings. Like, come on, man. This is exactly the platform you ran on. And now you got what you wanted, right? So you're seeing it, and well, okay, unfortunately, maybe you could say the war started or whatever, and who knows if it would have started with Trump or not, whatever, but you're at the helm, and when you're at the helm, it's your fault. I don't care if you're 1 year in, 3 years in, 4 years in, whatever, 7 years into your second term, right? So when you're the boss, it's your fault. That's it. You'll claim responsibility. It's under your watch, right? When you have a baseball team and you get in, you're a new coach, and you have first 2 years, you inherit a shitty team. You're there for 2 years. That's your fault. If they're terrible those 2 years, it's your fault, right? That's the way it works. Don't deflect blame because you're a leader, and that's not what leaders do. Leaders don't deflect, okay? They take responsibility and they fix problems, and you're a leader. That's why people follow you, because they trust you. And there's no trust in this system right now, which is pissing me off. And now what are we looking at? Inflation running wild. Not to have a massive rant here, but listen, we have to deal with it. For me, I truly believe, and based on Target, Walmart, you're seeing home price mortgage demands down its lowest level in 22 years with interest rates going higher. The Fed's going to continue to tighten. You're going to see it moderate. It doesn't mean it's going to come down tremendously, but when we see the data and you see moderation, that's going to be a sign of a bottom where we can say, okay, it's not going to go higher than this, so it should only get better than this. And we're not at that point yet. We need to see. We're going to be there, I think, over the next month and when the next round of data is going to be reported. But let's see. But from a stock standpoint or equity or your portfolios, that's what we need to see. Okay, it's not that, gas prices are going to go from $4 to $2 or $5 to $2, which is now the average close to $5. But if you top out and say, hey, they're not going to go higher than $5, just an example, right? Oil prices are going to go higher at the summer months, right? With more demand, less supply. As they come down, if we're saying, well, 5 is a top, and then they go to 480, 450, 4, that's a good sign. That's a great sign for inflation. That means inflation is coming down. Not so good for the oil companies, probably great for everything else in all the businesses. And that's what we need to look forward to. But we're going to see it. We're seeing it with Target. We're seeing a lot of consumers pull back. And for the first time, with Target saying we need to get rid of our inventory and sell it at much lower prices. That's the first deflationary event that I've seen in at least the last 24 months, probably longer, which is good news.
Yeah, and that is good news. And as we talk about what inflationary environments mean and things like that, you're going to have to see that, and you will, and you'll watch that unfold and play out. What's very frustrating to me, and I was ranting to you off camera, is the narrative that is trying to surround people to be okay with misery. And what I mean by that is you have two choices. You can accept what you're just told and blindly agree or disagree with that, or you can, do some data research and figure it out. My big point is that if you look at the narrative across the board, which I've talked about with Yellen in the Wall Street Journal, just yesterday in CNN, Commerce Secretary says the brutal reality is there isn't very much more to be done on gas prices. You have the leading superpower of the world, government, and the highest rankings from the president to everybody else telling you there is nothing that can be done to lower gas prices. And that is 100% untrue. Mm-hmm. So as an investor and as me, and this podcast helps, the microphone helps, you've talked about this in the past, how it's a good form of therapy. You can either be frustrated that the policies are choosing to inflict harm on everybody, or you can invest to try to make some of that back. How do you do that? Well, if you don't believe me that we can drill for more oil in a safe manner like we just did a few years ago and have prices much lower, that's fine. If you want to participate, buy oil companies. That's going to help offset. I just filled up a little bit over half a tank, and it was $70 Florida dollars. Mm-hmm. 70. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Biden, for half a tank.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And so you see these articles about...
It's not his fault, though. It's Russia's fault.
And the Commerce Secretary, and everything is blame Putin. Exactly. And that's what, and the takeaway there, if I can provide value or hope to provide value for listeners, other than just getting this off my chest, is that until something fundamental changes, don't expect a different result. My point is, don't expect prices to come down in the sense of the reality of inflation when you still have the government blaming big oil for gas prices and Putin for gas prices. You have them blaming meat producers for high food prices. And when you have the government attacking and blaming everybody else, like Frank just said, that is just setting the table. You can ignore everything they say after that. All you need to know is take away is, hey, they're not going to do anything to fix the problem. You can increase manufacturing here. You can incentivize businesses to open up here. You can incentivize all of that. And you're choosing not to. That's okay. I mean, it's not okay in my opinion, but it's okay to be done. And so that's what you have to think about. So when you see these stories about, hey, we hope inflation's coming down, they're telling you we're not doing anything. It's going to get worse before it gets better. You're seeing that again. Like I said, the Commerce Secretary saying the same thing. All that is 100% false. So nothing is changing in that sense. And with this recent rally, just to continue real quick here, and I know we're segueing, but we're obviously in a bear market. Market indices are getting hammered, and we're trying to fight back. But I would argue until the Fed changes its course on being hawkish, you have to use the rips to sell out of stocks that you want to unwind on and look for better opportunity. That's the new nature of environment in a bear market. And the comfort there is that you're going to get a lot of opportunity in bear markets. It's just a disappointing thing to buy and see things continue to go down. That's just the way investing works, though. So
yeah. And just to deflect everything on Putin, I can tell you the difference between Putin and our officials here. Putin's very predictable. He told Ukraine, don't go near Crimea and don't go near NATO. If you do, we're going to invade you. And Ukraine did both. And now they're in a war, right? So it was very predictable. Ukraine was like, hey, I think we got everyone in our pocket now, which they do, even though they're listed, not my opinion, they're listed as one of the most corrupt nations. Almost every one of their elections were corrupt. If you go back and look, we hated them, right? We hated Ukraine just until Russia invaded them. Now they're like seen as the greatest place ever. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. There's, great people there, but it's a nation that when it comes to politics, same with China, that you cannot trust. They're going to say one thing and do another, which I guess you could say that in politics a lot of places, but at least that was predictable. And to throw everything, this is Putin's fault, it's a joke. All right, we have to take responsibility for it. We have the technology to drill more oil, to be the large producer in the world, which I think we're second or third now. We were first for a little while. And we could take that money and take 15, 20% of those profits and throw it into alternative energy, green technology, whatever we want to do. But to see where prices are, this is not sustainable for the average American. It's not. I mean, I'm changing. Like, we drive my daughter to Georgia really quick. We drive my daughter to Georgia, which is 35 minutes away, right? So where's north you can go for Georgia border on the East Coast in Amelia Island? I fill up now, my wife and I, we make sure that we always fill up in Georgia because it's 15% cheaper than it is here in Georgia. Just even though, again, state tax, whatever the reason why, but that's a big difference, right? So if it's, close to $5 here, it would be $4.40 there, which is a significant difference. And because we're there 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and that's, most of our drive. But, people are changing their habits, and they are. And that's where sentiment changes. And that's why it happened so quick with Target, so quick with Walmart. They're like, holy cow. I just can't believe that people aren't, in the last month of that quarter, that it was like a light switch that people just closed their wallets and not buying discretionary things anymore. And now they shifted their products and everything. But you're seeing it now. You're seeing prices go up, continue to go up, but to the point where you can only have so much pricing power, right? The cure for inflation is going to be higher prices because eventually people are going to be like, okay, I'm not going to be paying these high prices and they got to come down. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing the average retailer have 35% more inventory than they had last year, and they have to just get rid of it at fire sale prices. That's what we need to see. Is it painful? Yes. The good news is Target said that the stock went down 8% in pre-market because you have those high-frequency trading firms that have access to that market, not you. I think it finished the day down like 2% or whatever. Yeah. So that's because it went down so much when they missed a quarter. But it tells you that the bottom is pretty close here, but we need to see inflation moderate. We need to take care of the oil problem. Hopefully we do sooner rather than later.